Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Actually, morning still, and happy holidays. Thank you for joining us for this important press conference today on the Pajaro recovery efforts and the path forward. My name is Nick Pasculi. I am the County Communications Director and Chief Public Information Officer for the county. And with me is Maite Anaya, who's our bilingual Public Information Officer. We are broadcasting live on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube with recordings available after this event. For those unable to join us, they'll be able to submit questions online. For our Spanish-speaking audience, this press conference is being simultaneously translated online. Today's agenda will provide a comprehensive recap of the significant progress made in Pajaro's recovery efforts and forward-looking perspective on what's next. We have an esteemed panel of speakers who each will share their insights from their respective areas of expertise. And following the presentation, we'll have some time for some questions and answers. To ensure a smooth flow today, we kindly ask that you hold your questions until the end of the presentation.
Buenos días y gracias por acompañarnos el día de hoy para esta conferencia de prensa importante sobre los esfuerzos de recuperación de Pájaro y el camino a seguir. Mi nombre es Maite Anaya, oficial de Información Pública Bilingüe, y me encuentro aquí con Nick Pasculi, el director de Comunicaciones del Condado y director de Información Pública. Estamos transmitiendo en vivo a través de Zoom, Facebook y YouTube, con una grabación disponible después del evento para aquellos que no puedan unirse a nosotros en tiempo real. Para nuestra audiencia que habla español, esta conferencia de prensa se está traduciendo simultáneamente en línea. Si nos está viendo en YouTube, puede encontrar el enlace para la interpretación en español en la descripción de esta transmisión. El enlace de la interpretación en español también se publicará en nuestra página de Facebook y una vez que haga clic en el enlace, seleccione su idioma preferido. Para los hablantes de español, seleccione Spanish o Español MX y presione el botón de Assist o Asistir para ver la conferencia de prensa en su idioma seleccionado. La agenda de hoy está diseñada para ofrecer un resumen completo del progreso significativo logrado en los esfuerzos de recuperación de Pájaro y una perspectiva hacia el futuro sobre lo que sigue. Contamos con un estimado panel de presentadores que compartirán puntos de sus respectivas áreas de responsabilidad. Y después de las presentaciones, abriremos el espacio para una sesión de preguntas y respuestas para abordar cualquier pregunta que puedan tener. Para asegurar que todo fluya sin contratiempos, pedimos que por favor guarden todas las preguntas hasta el final de las presentaciones. Gracias.
And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Glenn Church, District 2 Supervisor for the County of Monterey and Chair of the Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Church will provide opening remarks to set the stage for today's discussion, and he will also give our closing remarks at the end of the press conference. Supervisor Church, the floor is yours.
Morning, everyone. I think we all know about benefit that the Pajaro on March 2023 and caused the evacuations of the community, disruption in people's lives and destruction of some important infrastructure. So over the last year and a half, the county has literally held dozens and dozens of meetings within the community, with groups, with individuals, all in attempts to help bring back some normalcy to the community. And while these efforts haven't, we have had here haven't been just to repair the physical damage, but also to improve safety and to aid people so that they can get back to their normal lives as much as possible. As we head into the last year of the AB 102 implementation, the $20 million that was allocated to the Pajaro revitalization program is on track, and I want to really emphasize that it is on track to all be spent. It's going to be spread out there equally among helping residents as well as the rebuilding of the community. So we're here today to really take a look at this program, give you some updates on it, to announce the Pajaro Community Grant awardees, and as well to announce some additional direct assistance to individuals and to households. What I'd like to do is give a little introduction here on the different speakers that are going to be following me here. We're going to have Kelsey Scanlon, who's Director of Emergency Management. She's going to provide a little overview of the program and some details on it. Ray Cancino from the CEO of Community Bridges will give a phase 2 update, status of distribution and additional grocery monies that will be distributed. We have the CAO and President of the Community Foundation for Monterey County, Dan Baldwin, who will give the community grants announcements. Chris Donnelly, who's Executive Director of the Workforce Development Program, will discuss the Business Grants Program, and he'll be joining us via Zoom. We have Randy Ishii, who's the Director of Public Works, Facilities, and Parks, will give a general overview of the infrastructure projects planned. And we have Chief Joe Mendoza from, there's Chief right there, from North County Fire Protection District, who will give a little discussion on high water vehicle and safety issues. And with that, I'd like to pass it over here to Kelsey.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Church. I'm Kelsey Scanlon. I'm the Director of Emergency Management for the County of Monterey. Immediately following the breach of the Pajaro levee, the county mobilized a significant amount of recovery resources to support disaster victims. We did this by providing emergency housing, meals, transportation, restrooms, showers, water, and commodity distribution to ensure that the critical infrastructure and key resources required by the community were in fact available. Through a larger long-term recovery process, the county led very extensive community outreach efforts for over 6 months. That process led to a culminating presentation in December 2023 to the Board of Supervisors, at which point they approved a list of community-vetted recovery and resilience projects to be funded by Assembly 102 funds. Over the past 11 months, the Department of Emergency Management has truly hit the ground running and has been working to administer these recovery and resilience programs in the community of Pajaro. The county's priorities upon beginning these projects was to efficiently and effectively distribute relief funds to vulnerable populations and provide economic support for individuals, households, and small businesses in the community of Pajaro that need it the most. With considering the fact that there has been very minimal precedent set for establishing a post-disaster economic assistance program for individuals at the county level, DEM staff leveraged local expertise, which you'll hear from today, to create a new direct service program and expedite payment to disaster victims. Prior to the dissemination of Assembly Bill 102 funds, approximately $14 million in relief funds had been distributed to the Pajaro residents through local, state, and federal assistance programs. I think it's important to note that upon completion of the Pajaro Unmet Needs Disaster Assistance Program, it's anticipated a total of $24 million in direct assistance will have been infused into the community to support flood recovery. The intention of this program that you're about to receive an update on is to build upon existing federal disaster relief programs, and it really serves to meet the remaining disaster recovery costs that are burdensome to survivors. And ultimately, what we're talking about here today and providing context to is that the last mile of delivery is truly the hardest, and as such requires significant diligence by the county and our contractors. The community need for economic assistance is quite acute and ongoing and greater than this $20 million. And the disaster case managers have been working directly with the individuals to address some of the larger picture, not just the immediate economic assistance. And they do that through the case management process, which includes personalized recovery plans, assisting them navigating not just our program, but FEMA programs, navigating insurance companies, advocating for additional resources, and assessing remaining unmet recovery needs. Ultimately, the goal here is to leverage all available programs, not just the county program, for filling those post-disaster financial recovery gaps. And so with that, I am very excited for you to receive the presentations for the rest of this press conference. And I'd like to introduce Ray Cancino, CEO of Community Bridges, to provide an update regarding the Pajaro Unmet Needs Disaster Assistance Program on behalf of Community Bridges, as well as Catholic Charities for Monterey County. And I'd also like to give an acknowledgement to Angela from Catholic Charities, who is here in the room as well. Ray.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm joined here by my partner, Angela Di Novella, Catholic Charities Diocese of Monterey. Thank you for being here as we discuss the Pajaro Unmet Needs Individual and Household Disaster Assistance Program. This program was created to support families impacted by the March 2023 Pajaro levee breach, providing crucial assistance to help residents recover from the devastating flood. Through the efforts of local advocacy and a $20 million state funding allocation, the program has been able to bridge the gap between disaster-related damages and the support already available, such as insurance, FEMA, and state assistance. The program's goal is to ensure that the residents in Pajaro can rebuild their lives with dignity and support, especially in areas where other forms of aid fall short. Currently, Catholic Charities Diocese of Monterey and Community Bridges are partnering to administer this program. Disaster case managers are working one-on-one with households to create tailored recovery plans, navigate complex aid systems, and identify unmet needs. To date, the program has already made significant strides. In phase one, over 464,600 was distributed to 688 households to address immediate needs, representing over 128% of households based on the latest census, and impacting over 2,472 household members. In phase two, which began earlier this year, the focus has shifted to long-term recovery, including home repairs, vehicle replacements, and personal property. To date, more than $633,975 have been allocated for this purpose, bringing the total program support at the end of November to $1,098,575. As we move forward, the program is expanding with a second round of phase one. Households that previously received assistance will automatically get additional funds ranging from $200 to $1,000, depending on household size. Community Bridges is committed to getting this second round of funding to the families within the next 60 days. For those who may feel that they are eligible and missed the first round of funding, there is still an opportunity to apply. Please contact La Manzana at 831-724-2997 for assistance and review of the county website for eligibility requirements. We acknowledge that the recovery process is not without its challenges, including strict documentation requirements and the need for personalized support. But we remain committed to ensuring that all eligible households receive the assistance they need and that we can consistently ensure we are reassessing the funds that remain with the needs we are seeing on the ground. In closing, the Pajaro Unmet Needs Program stands as a testament to the power of community partnership with our county government and local nonprofits. We are making progress, but there's still work to do. If you haven't applied for census or you feel overlooked, please reach out to La Manzana or Community Bridges. Every eligible family deserves the help they need to rebuild, and we're here to support that. So thank you. I'm next going to be introducing Dan Baldwin, President and CEO of the Community Foundation for Monterey County, on the announcements of their community grants.
Thank you, Ray. It's great to be here. It's great to see everyone. You know, the mission of the Community Foundation for Monterey County is to be to inspire philanthropy and be a catalyst for strengthening communities throughout Monterey County. And sometimes strengthening communities means that you have to do it in response to, in this case, a disaster. So we are very proud to have been able to partner with the County of Monterey and especially with Kelsey's team in being able to develop a grant program that would issue close to $1.9 million of grants to local organizations that would deal with the resiliency of the community of Pajaro. In addition, this is in addition to our flood relief fund, which Community Bridges was a recipient of. And so the immediate relief work that took place in the immediate aftermath, and so we were able to grant $800,000 to Pajaro out of our flood relief fund. So you will all receive a press release that will have the names of the individual organizations that received the grants and their amounts. So rather than just to read those, I will tell you, will recite for you some of the areas of support that our grants are going to fulfill. So community health and dental care, business resiliency, digital equity, arts, farm worker advocacy, tenants' rights, legal services, financial workshops, food insecurity, and disaster preparedness. The process included a community grants committee, if you will, that helped score and assess the grant applications that came in. We had 39 grant applications and 23 grants were awarded. The committee was comprised of a small business owner, a youth representative, 2 local government officials, and 2 Pajaro residents. So we really felt like we had great representation from the community of Pajaro telling us what the primary needs were. I'm going to go off script just for a moment. I've been the CEO of a community foundation, here for 15 years and 8 years in a community prior. And that community had a massive flood in 2008. So I've seen floods and had the ability to compare floods as a disaster to other types of disasters. Floods are particularly challenging because the destruction is really inside the building, and the destruction is with people's lives. And it's not like a tornado or a hurricane where everything is just like flattened. You drive through Pajaro today, you would know that there was a flood, that there was a disaster. But the effects of it are still there, and they're going to be there for a long time. So I applaud the county for being very diligent and taking the long view on how to really bring a substantive recovery to the community after the flood. So well done, Supervisor Church. Thank you very much. And now I am going to introduce Chris Donnelly, who is the Executive Director of the Workforce Development Board, and he'll be joining us through Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Just wanted to provide you an update in regards to the small business disaster assistance. As you know, that the county allocated close to $4 million for small businesses. And as part of the small business grants, we broke them down into 2 phases. Phase 1 was for businesses to apply for about $85,000 to assist them with loss of inventory, equipment, revenue, and building damages. And then also to in-home businesses up to $5,000 for inventory, computer, laptops, and tablets, and so forth. And then phase 2 was for beautification. And the beautification was for about up to $15,000 that a business could apply for. And that was for looking at interior, exterior painting, landscaping, fascia, signage, lighting, a number of things what businesses will need to be able to bring back their businesses and so forth. And as of today, we've issued close 92 applications we received. And in the progress of that, with phase 1, we've approved 34 applications, and we've approved up to $1.258 million in funding for the businesses in phase 1. And we're distributing, looking at more funds eventually. Again, we're still going through the process of approving the applications and reviewing the applications. It does take a little bit of time to go through those applications and working with the businesses as well. In phase 2 with beautification, we've had 58 applications. 29 have been approved and already starting the process. And we put out about $517,000. And we had such a great response with regards to the beautification that the amount of funding for beautification was not sufficient. So we've moved some of the funding from phase 1 to phase 2. In total, we've put up closely $2 million in funding into the community. And one of the greatest things about this is if you drive through Pajaro now, you'll see some of these businesses that have had painting, new signage, new roofs, and a variety of things what they're doing to be able to build their businesses and to make sure that those businesses are viable in the community. So it's just a pretty amazing over the last 4 to 5 months and see what's happening. A lot of the businesses are still struggling, and a lot of businesses still need a lot of support. And with that, we're here to be able to assist them. So that's pretty much with my update, and I will turn it over to Randy Ishii, Director of Public Works.
Thank you and good morning. I'm Randy Ishii, Director of Public Works, Facilities and Parks for Monterey County. I will be providing a brief infrastructure update on the enhancement efforts in Pajaro, and we also have a brief PowerPoint presentation that goes along with it. Our overview will start with current project statuses for the Public Works' Safe Streets, then Parks' plans, and finally, facilities. We will then have opportunity for questions and comments. However, we ask that because we have other speakers, to reserve your questions and comments for the end, after all the speakers have spoken. Moving on to our Safe Streets and Public Works, staff hosted a Safe Streets workshop to gather community input. The county is developing infrastructure improvements for Pajaro, focusing on pedestrian enhancements, such as sidewalk repairs, street crossing upgrades, accessible curb ramps, traffic signal improvements, and street safety lighting. The project currently is in development and is expected to begin construction by mid-2025. There's some details in there, and one of which is that the project design and scoping is in progress, and the contractor identification is also in progress. The presentation included a vicinity map showing the approximate locations of the new streetlights. And there's another slide that shows these 3 different Google Earth concept plans. And these concept plans sheets show the approximate locations of the pedestrian improvements. Moving on to parks. The map before you shows the location of Pajaro Park. In order to meet the grant deadlines, the county has initiated discussions with the Pajaro Sunny Mesa Community Services District about using existing county contracts for the proposed work. Monterey County Parks and the Department of Emergency Management recently conducted a site assessment and are developing an agreement with the district. Detailed cost estimates are being prepared, with construction anticipated for the spring or summer of 2025. Additionally, staff are exploring placing remaining funds into an escrow account to cover future operations and maintenance expenses for the park. This brings us to facilities. The map shows the approximate location of the Puerto Vallejo Mansion, the location of the Pajaro Library. The Pajaro Library renovation includes adding access to the 2nd and 3rd floors with an interior lift and exterior stairs, as well as creating space for community programming and service providers. Public Works staff are developing plans, preparing construction documents, submitting for permits, and refining the cost estimates. The library, as you know, was heavily damaged during the 2023 Pajaro levee breach, with repairs expected to begin in January of 2025. Due to the cost of required repairs, flood repairs are only partially funded at this time. Thus, in early 2025, the board will consider reallocating renovation funds for these repairs, as well as other funding sources. That concludes our summary. And we ask once again that you reserve your questions and comments for the end after the remaining speakers have spoken. And that moves us on to our next speaker, the Chief of the North County Fire Protection District, Joel Mendoza. Chief.
Good morning. I'm pleased to provide an update on the 2023 winter storms flood relief program, specifically as it pertains to the North County Fire District. As you know, the winter storms brought devastating flooding to our region. In response to this crisis, the California State Legislature allocated crucial funds to help communities recover and rebuild. We're grateful for their support, as well as that of the Monterey County Board of Supervisors and the Monterey County Department of Emergency Management. Over the past year, a significant portion of our efforts has been dedicated to identifying the essential tools and equipment that are needed and that are going to be funded by this grant. Our dedicated staff has invested countless hours in researching and selecting the most suitable equipment, working closely with suppliers to ensure we acquire quality tools and equipment that meet the highest safety and compliance standards. We're pleased to announce that we've successfully completed this process, which is estimated to cost about $500,000. We do have a few slides that go with this presentation, and they're up on the monitor as we speak. The Department of Emergency Management of Monterey County is currently actively engaged in the process of sourcing and acquiring these items, which include a high water rescue vehicle. This state-of-the-art vehicle can navigate in up to 50 inches of flood water and seat at least 12 passengers, allowing us to reach residents that are trapped in flooded areas. In addition, we'll be receiving one New Holland tractor and a trailer that goes with it. This versatile piece of equipment will be used to clear debris, help fill sandbags, and support other critical operations. In addition, we'll be receiving a flood rescue boat. This rapid response vessel will enable us to quickly access and evacuate individuals in flooded areas. And lastly, we'll also be receiving a generator. This is a reliable power source that will ensure the operation of our mobile command center during power outages. By investing in these critical programs and working closely with our community, we are building a more resilient future and ensuring the safety of our residents. On behalf of the North County Fire District, we thank you again for the support. And now I'll bring back up Kelsey Scanlon, Director of Department of Emergency Management, and she will cover emergency preparedness, projects, and next steps.
Thank you, Chief Mendoza. So the Department of Emergency Management has actively been engaging in the community over the past year, in addition to financial administration of all the projects that we've discussed today. Some of the outreach includes community outreach and preparedness activities and workshops where people can learn how to fill sandbags, create emergency plans, how to build a go kit. We did a fire preparedness outreach event, which included presentations from North County Fire about vegetation management, a presentation from the American Red Cross regarding smoke alarms and smoke alarm installation and fire safety within the dwelling, as well as general messaging about the emergency alert and warning system. After the storms, one of the most significant feedback that we received from the community was that they either had not received emergency alerts or had not been tied into the traditional ways in which we communicate. And so as such, we've been exploring a variety of different options for how we could create unique solutions for engaging with the community in a disaster, as well as ensuring access to the emergency alert system. And so through a partnership with the County Communications Bureau, we did install alert and warning advertisements on billboards in the community of Pajaro to increase community awareness of the emergency alert system, as well as several registration days in which we actively sat with residents to enroll them in the emergency alert system. One of the other really exciting projects that we have going on in partnership with the community bridges is the establishment of a Pajaro Community Emergency Response Team. Truly, the community of Pajaro is its greatest asset. They have a passionate and committed and extremely resilient community, and they typically already rely on themselves for information and resource sharing. And so by creating a Pajaro Community Emergency Response Team, we can truly equip and train them to essentially help them help themselves in an emergency, in addition to government and nonprofit services in the event of really any type of emergency, not just a flood emergency. Additionally, the Department of Emergency Management has been engaging in a planning process that's led by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to establish an emergency response plan for the Pajaro levee. We are continuing to look for opportunities to engage with the community to increase community preparedness, increase capacity within the community, as well as our nonprofit partners to prepare for, respond to, and recover from any type of hazard or disaster. We're very excited about the dissemination of additional funds and the ongoing dissemination of Phase 2 funds for both residents and businesses, and are very much excited for commencing the significant infrastructure projects that we have planned for this coming year. So these efforts that have been presented today mark an important inflection point in the recovery process, which is very much still ongoing, and we recognize that progress in the recovery sphere must be persistent, and it must be ongoing, and it must be consistent, and it must be transparent. And we're very much excited and honored to continue to work in the community of Pajaro for the next several years. So with that, I will leave it to Supervisor Church for closing remarks.
Thank you, Kelsey. People in the community of Pajaro have historically felt that they've been neglected. But I think we can look at this now and see that this is not really so now. What has happened over the last year and a half since these floods is involvement by the county that is unprecedented. And we really need to emphasize this. This is unprecedented in the sense of the 20 million that's coming in from the state, of the efforts that have been put forth by the county, of coordination with various agencies such as the North County Fire. And this is unprecedented in the sense that Monterey County has not done this with any other community that has faced a natural disaster of this magnitude. So this has been an opportunity for the county to really step up and come in to help this community. And as you have heard today, there's a lot more that will be done. So what is happening now is not just a recovery from the floods of March 2023. With what has been done, what is being done now, with what is planned to be done, Pajaro itself will be coming back in a stronger position than it was. And I think that is something that all of us who have been involved into here is something that we can feel somewhat proud and somewhat satisfied with. And I know when I go out into the community, I hear positive responses from the involvement from the county and the various agencies. And it's our goal for this to continue and to see a community that is really has its resilience enhanced and stronger for the future. And with that, we're opening it up for questions.
There are no questions in the room. I have a question from by text. This question is from KACU. It's for Chris Donnelly. Why is only about half of the 4 million that is budgeted for small business disaster assistance expended and obligated? What is the plan for spending the remaining 2 million?
So right now we're still we're still reviewing the applications. And it does take a while to review the applications since each of the businesses need to provide us with receipts and backup documentation to support their losses. If it's loss of wages, we need to have their tax returns from 22, 23 to be able to determine that. If there's loss of inventory, we need to have the receipts for the loss of inventory. So there's a variety of things that we're still looking at that we need to be able to provide it from the businesses to be able to support the expenditures. As I mentioned earlier, all the funding in Phase 2 will be spent, and that is in regards to the beautification. So we're still working with the businesses to complete the applications. There will be a couple of businesses that will not be approved because they're outside of the flood zone and also other areas. So we're still working on it, and if there is any funds that are unspent will be going back to the County Board of Supervisors for recommendations on how we'd like to spend those additional funds.
I'm sensitive to the fact that all of this takes a lot of documentation and you're doing something unprecedented, as a few of you said. But it does seem, I guess I'm surprised to learn at this phase 1 year later, how little of the direct aid money has been distributed to people and businesses. Can somebody, and I don't know if that's Kelsey or Ray, but talk about what the anticipated pace was and what is going to be the anticipated pace in year 2? When we're back here, will we see a similar amount of expenditures, or do we think it will all have been spent? What is kind of the forward-looking timeline, and will it change after year 1?
Yep, of course. Thank you for that question. I think it's important to acknowledge that any type of disaster that results in disaster victims, relief will never come fast enough. Truly, it doesn't matter if it's this disaster, the next one, the last one. Relief cannot come fast enough for a disaster victim. And I fully feel and empathize with that lived experience of the community of Pajaro, that the money is absolutely needed yesterday, the year before that, 5 years before that, the last disaster. And so I don't want to diminish that experience because it is true and it's profound. Having said that, we are moving at a very steady and consistent pace that is reflective of our fiduciary responsibility for ensuring that taxpayer dollars through this relief program are spent appropriately to the intended disaster victims and to the extent that is feasible and reasonable within the claims that the applicants are providing for us. We are cognizant of the grant guidelines that have been set for us and ensuring that this program, which, as I mentioned before, builds upon several other programs, does not implicate the applicants or the county in misuse of funds. And as such, we do require documentation, which is a slow process, especially if the documentation does not exist. And so when we're talking about that diligence of collecting documentation, what we're talking about is creative solutions for ensuring that we have something that can justify the expense, while also ensuring that we've accomplished what the Board of Supervisors directed us to do, which is to efficiently and effectively and as leniently as we can administer the funds. And so our contractors have been doing a tremendous job in working with individual households on a case-by-case basis to provide a very bespoke service and to ensure that we can get creative with identifying documentation that will help them navigate through the next phase and on to the next process, which would include receiving a gift card or a check. And so this process for us is going at the pace that we anticipated. In fact, I might actually say it's moving a lot faster when you consider that establishing a government program almost out of thin air from the ground up in 30 days, a 30-day application period, and then immediately cash out the door within 30 days of that is quite significant considering the magnitude of what we're talking about. And so, as I mentioned, I appreciate and feel for the need to have expedited funds, but we are moving at a very consistent pace. For funds that are not used in phase 1 or 2, we will be approaching the board on how best to reallocate those funds or whether to do another round of phase 1 at the end of the grant performance period. So it is very much our intention that every single dollar of the Assembly Bill 102 funds are spent and that there is a direct impact into the community. And so with that, I do feel that your question has been sufficiently answered.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great.
I have a follow-up
Sure.
question that maybe is more for community churches, which is I hope that someone could explain a little bit more in detail the admin. And Is it that you have hired additional staff to manage this? And what I see in the report, it looks like Catholic Charities and community bridges, and I don't know. They're curious about.
Yeah, so first I'll also add on to Kelsey's. The other reality is also the fact that at the start of the disaster, there wasn't a necessary understanding of what people's losses were, right? Some people's losses were only 20,000, some people's were 35, but we've based it on census data and information that we had to kind of identify the buckets and where the amount would be most needed. And as we go through this process, we're identifying basically savings in terms of allocation that will be redistributed, which is why the county has basically announced an additional phase one investment that is going to immediately go out the door as soon as possible. In terms of your question around the admin costs, the 10%, it's direct assistance to this service and to this program, right? Actually, our federal, our federal ICR, independent cost rate that we get from USDA is actually 17.1. So we're actually subsidizing 7.1% of actual costs of just administration. So meaning HR, hiring people, managing contracts, HR, all those components go above and beyond that. An additional 10% is really the direct assistance of other folks. So we do have, like, for instance, when we're talking about that 4 weeks of the application, I had 16 staff from across the county of Santa Cruz basically redirected to service and support this program. But it's not like I got extra money to pay those additional staff. The max amount rate is the de minimis federal amount, which is 10%. And so, I think that if you look across any type of grant, that is a pretty low admin cost to operate. Just how many bodies and support is needed to process conversations, to process gift cards, to order the gift cards, to deliver the gift cards, to call families, to follow up on appointments, to set up new appointments, all that added work. Just to have the coordination to make sure you're ensuring diligence in our reporting. So it's audited at the state and federal level, as well as compliance to other fiscal requirements. Angela.
Thank you, Ray, and thank you, Kelsey. Thank you for your question. Similarly for Catholic Charities, referencing again on the administrative cost, it is similar to community bridges. We do subsidize these services because it does take a load on really making sure that we're responsible fiscally, that this money is administrative as it's meant to be. And for that, it requires capacity to do so. All this administrative cost goes into the fiscal team, the HR team, all of that runs behind the scenes so the people that stays in the front lines can do the work of staying close to their clients. And I really want to acknowledge the staff and the disaster case managers, because day in and day out, they've been working with the survivors since the beginning of the disaster to make sure that they are not only connected to the service, but also to the wide array of network in our community, advocating for federal and state resources, FEMA, and working through the process of making sure that they can receive the monies that they are entitled to through their insurance company if they had, or through FEMA. And these monies are meant to fulfill unmet needs and figure it out the delta. And there's a wide array of services that they've been connected to in our communities. And I really want to acknowledge that the work that the disaster case managers do, because it's really holding their hands through this difficult part of their lives. And it takes time, and the advocacy that they do is really commendable, because they stay true to their clients and hold their hands through this process. And as Kelsey mentioned, sometimes it does get that creative spirit and mindset to make sure that they can provide the documentation and to fulfill the needs of this program. So I just want to acknowledge that. And thank you again for this opportunity, for being here and sharing our side too. Thank you.
Yeah.
She did reference the community foundation in her question, so happy to answer that. Our fee came out to about 5% on this program. For our philanthropy funds, the disaster funds, we actually do that without a fee. And so we've granted about $5 million over the last few years with no fee. In this case, though, it's the standing up of a brand new grant program and holding community meetings, processing 23 checks, and we had opportunity to get a 10% fee, and we calculated that we could do this with a 5% overhead. And so we felt like we managed it very efficiently.
On the third stand, and I guess we'll see the list later, but are all the recipients nonprofit or?
Oh, yeah, they are. Yeah, thank you. And they've all been notified. They are, all grants that leave the community foundation get approved ultimately by the board of directors, and that meeting was just yesterday afternoon. And so, and the press release that's everyone's going to be provided details all the grant recipients. Did that answer your question, Sarah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I have another question from KACU. This would be for Ray and Angela, so you can make your way up to the podium if you'd like. To date, how many Pajaro residents who have submitted reimbursement claims for funding have had all of their claims rejected because they couldn't provide the necessary documentation?
So the total amount of households impacted were 688 households. And I have to look at the slide, but on the slide available, the total applications that was given was 757. So the delta is 71, I want to say, if my math is right. The information is available on the county website in terms of those that were denied. And most of the cases that were denied in those contexts were just not eligible, meaning they didn't live in the area at the time, were duplicative in nature, meaning other households were submitting on top of, in addition to other applicants. And so very little, in my opinion, has been as a result of complete denials. In terms of getting to the maximum allowable, I can't speak to it directly in terms of our disaster case managers, but rarely are we able to basically meet that high threshold. And there's a lot of complications to that in full transparency. Pajaro is a very cash-based system in terms of individuals aren't necessarily banking traditional banking options, meaning they buy a truck, they might pay in cash, right? And so having a receipt that wasn't flooded at the time without a banking structure that is in the back end, keeping those records is sometimes difficult. And so getting a photo, for instance, would qualify. And so situations and incidences like that are common, and we're trying to work through them as much as possible to maximize everyone's benefit. But the reality is when you are working in situations where it's not it's a traditional cash-based system that isn't really traditionally banked, it makes documentation experiences like this a little bit more difficult.
And in terms of Catholic Charities, our involvement in this process has been for phase 2, which is for the replacement of personal property, vehicle repairs or vehicle replacement, and property and housing assistance as well. And that referencing back to what I mentioned, this is a lengthy process. For us, we do take this seriously, and we hold clients for a long time until we can make a determination. So my understanding is that all cases that we have the cases that have been closed are those cases that have been completed and funded. Cases that have not been funded yet continue to be open. So we continue to work in finding ways on how to fulfill the needs of those community members. So, thank you.
Any other questions from anyone? Yes, Sarah.
Sorry, I'm monopolizing here.
That's okay. No one else is stepping up. It's all yours.
This is a question for you and Randy, I think. It sounds like the funds allocated for the library project are expected to be insufficient for what needs to be done, but that the funds allocated for the Pajaro Park project maybe will have access to enable long-term maintenance. Was that the intent? And this is, my memory is rusty about that board deliberation a year ago. Is that the intent, or could you just move money from one pot to another at this point? Is that an option?
I can take a question. You want to take it? Okay.
Excellent question. Thank you very much, Ms. Rubin. As with all projects, part of the project process consists of doing scoping at the beginning and onset of a project. With the amount of damages that were in the Port of Vallejo Mansion, aka the Pajaro Library, when staff reviewed it, they saw that from the surface level that there were certain damages, and they had a good sense of what that cost estimate would be for the repairs. However, at that point in time, they didn't realize how much further they had to make repairs into the areas that cannot be visually seen, such as the interior walls and other locations. So as they went into the repair process further, it was then discovered that the cost to repair the facility properly, all the mold and everything else, was going to cost more than what was originally projected. And that was the ask which staff made at that particular board meeting. Switching gears to the Pajaro Park project, that park project had a budget at that point in time. And as we've gone through the construction scoping for that further, it appears now that the cost for the construction is lesser than what we originally forecasted. So those are the circumstances that have now resulted at this point, is that some projects are greater in cost once we delve into it further, but then there's others where the costs wind up being less because of once you've done the due diligence and delved into it further. So that's in terms of the reapportionment of the budgets, that's a discussion that would happen at a future board level. But for now, we are looking for other alternatives for funding the Pajaro Library, aka Port of Vallejo Mansion project, on its own merits, and the Pajaro Park on its own.
Do you have a sense of what the total library budget is?
I will need to get back to you after I confer with staff, but that's still in development design.
Just to follow up on that a little bit, that building, the Port of Vallejo mansion, is actually 3 floors. And it's only been 1 floor that's been in operation, where the library's been all through this time. When I spoke about the community coming back stronger, it isn't like we're going to stop with this 20 million. I mean, this, I think the board has listed this as a priority to continue on and get those other floors developed. And they'll be available for the community, for meeting rooms at that point when that's put together. I plan on having an office out there. There'll be, we've talked about for community organizations could operate out there. So there's plans to continue on with that there too. So it's not going to be just get the library going. There's going to be more efforts put into there. Anybody else have any other questions? Sarah?
No idea, but I will stop. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, with that, we'll end the press conference. Thank everybody for coming, and have a good day.
Sonia.